Alcohol in the food, but even if we finish early, they wouldn't let us until 6 o'clock anyway. So this is the IoT Power Panel. I'm Roger Struckoff. I'm the conference chair, and I know next to nothing about IoT. So I invited a lot of people. They're all involved in the Internet of Things. Now, I actually do a lot of research on these things to try to figure out what's going on. And one thing that I found, there's not just one Internet of Things. There are several. So you take the old analogy of the blind people trying to figure out what an elephant is. An elephant looks like a rope, an elephant looks like a hose, whatever. This is like many blind people trying to figure out what many elephants are. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask everybody, if you agree there's more than one Internet of Things. If you disagree, you have to leave. But if you agree, tell me in which one are you involved? Chad.
Thank you much for the opportunity, Roger.
Yeah.
So I think the Internet of Things, there are several different ways of looking at the Internet of Things. Platforms as a service, data as a service, those types of things. But I think they really roll up to the larger concept of the Internet of Everything. So no matter which Internet of Things that you choose, whether it's in particular wearables or to connect a car or on and on and on, eventually it's going to have to all interconnect at some point, because that's when we get the most out of this evolution that we call the Internet of Things.
Okay.
So I think I kind of think about Internet of Things. There's the connectivity of the things, but because I'm from Adobe and we think about marketing, is what is the opportunity to monetize within the Internet of Things and the platforms that are being fought for today. So from my perspective, it is a huge network of which it's going to be interesting to see how do we monetize that network.
Yeah, there was an earlier speech today about just that topic. And by the way, I did not introduce the company names because that's too much for me to remember and take too much time, so feel free to do so. Chad, could you tell everyone who you're with now? Because I think it's... Please.
Sure. I'm now Chief Strategy Officer with Deep Information Sciences. We focus on the data side of the equation now by creating a completely new approach to managing the data called an adaptive database.
Okay. Esmeralda.
So I'm Vice President of Enterprise and Cloud for Ericsson, and we strive to connect everyone and everything, which of course is the foundation for IoT, but of course we're here today to talk about what happens when you have connectivity and how do you put the I or interconnectivity in IoT to bring about marketplaces. And you see marketplaces manifested in connected car, in smart cities, smart utilities, smart energy, industrial internet applications. So there's really not a thing or an industry that's not impacted by IoT.
Okay, Chris?
Hi, so I'm Chris Matthew. I'm one of the co-founders of Octoblue, now a Citrix company. I like Chad's answer. I like all of the answers, but the Internet of Everything resonates well with us, except you may not need the Internet. The Internet may not be any part of the equation, right? So, I mean, we look at global mesh networks. Things could be private cloud, public cloud, hybrid of the two. Could be a rolling mesh network of vehicles, for instance. So we like to call it the integration of everything, which we think encompasses not only smart devices, wearable devices, but also APIs, traditional APIs like Salesforce or GoToMeeting, for instance, as well as people in other clouds. So it's really bringing all of these things, which may not be a tangible item, together.
Hi, I'm Hermano Bonifazi. I'm the CEO of Solgenia. So we are focused mostly on measuring the things, and try to collect all the information that you can use for, many ways of changing the future. So I like to say that there is only probably one IoT that I like to call the Internet of Digital Life, because it's exactly what is going to happen. The way we are going to live in the future probably will be very different. So things is a little generic. I think really the next quality of our life will be affected by the Internet of Digital Life.
Okay, and I'll work this way coming back. So I have this thing. I showed people this morning as a smartphone, in case you haven't, not up to date. And it has this thing that monitors your steps, And I'm not a real slave to training, but so I set a pretty modest goal. for the number of steps and amount of activity. And here at the trade show, I reached that goal by 7:30 this morning. So I'm just going to go back to bed. And now I'm like at 4 times my goal. I should be dead by now. Okay. So this is reporting somewhere, or it may or may not be. But this comes in the context of wearables. And in the end, it can hook up to all sorts of sophisticated stuff. Isn't that fundamentally a different thing, so to speak, than, and it's part of my digital life, whether I accept it or not, but isn't that fundamentally different than a smart city, a smart grid, smart meters, the industrial internet, and there's a few things I'm probably leaving out. Romano, what do you think of that?
Well, as I was saying, I think that, we are just at the beginning of a new cycle of approach to the life, generally speaking, and how the digital things come into our life. So I don't think that we can classify exactly right now what we are going to expect in the future, meaning that probably the way we shop for products will be totally different in the future. You know that I'm in the business of measuring, so collecting information to allow sensors and anything to use the information in a different way, not just, for the big data or analysis. That's pretty clear. But I mean, I envision a future where, the products that we shop and we purchase today will be sold without pricing, or you can make the price. So that's really, I think, the way that we are going to interact in a different way with digital technology, even steps. I mean, right now you use it just for your fitness or whatever you're doing. Sometimes I used to say that probably we should see in the future, expect to see in the future more buying our shoes by step than just, thinking the way that we, that's something that I see coming. So this is just the beginning. I think it's difficult to classify right now what will be the future, but I expect this will be impacting our life in so many ways that we can't imagine.
Well, Chris, don't you do like drones and cars and stuff
we
like that?
We do it all.
I mean, how does that?
But the wearables, they're vertical agnostic. If you think about them, they apply to consumers and home automation. They apply to office automation and definitely industrial as well. The example you had with the Fitbit, we worked on a proof of concept with a healthcare company that wanted to connect all of these various over-the-counter sensor like oxygen levels, glucose monitoring, etc. And one of these values, these vitals, may be okay, but in concert with lots of different metrics and sensors to that point, there could be a system that's out of balance where we might be able to bring a triage of doctors that are managing this chronically ill patient, together to help triage maybe a situation before it gets worse.
I can see in a hospital setting, I'm just imagining myself walking down the street, coming out of a bar, at 10 o'clock at night, and I'm surrounded by medical people.
How can we help you?
Yeah, how can I help you? But okay, I get it. That's probably...
Maybe after tonight, that may not be a bad thing.
No, not tonight. Go ahead.
So I actually agree with what you said, which is I think we're really at the very early stages, but you are beginning to understand what the value of IoT will really be about. And I think it's tied to, that smartphone that you have that provides a very interesting digital identity. And if you think about where everything is headed, it's about contextual data streams. The Internet of Things from a marketplace perspective, it's going to be buyers and users of data. Data becomes that currency. And what can you create from that data that's being made available from all the sensors and that are deployed out there on pretty much anything that you can conceive.
A little more depth. Ericsson says telco, and I actually don't know where they all work. But could you talk a little bit about before that, what you've been doing in the years before you became part of Ericsson and how that's integrated into what you're doing now?
I was actually part of a startup company that did monetization for last September to really be that platform that was going to allow the monetization for different verticals, cloud models, as well as even the telco models.
Jill, we heard a presentation earlier today by someone from Adobe talking about cross-channel marketing, and how does that relate to what we're talking about right now? Or how does it relate or not relate to my little story about the steps and my little stories about drones? And is there a connection there, or is it truly separate what you do?
Well, I think at the highest level, yes, it's just cross-channel. They're just a bunch of things, and there are going to be more things. Those things might be your car, and will be Adobe. Hopefully, will be in the mix of the software that's helping buy those ads from a geo-fenced location and showing up on your dash, because the car company has noted that you need new brakes. So I think, the car would be the next channel. I think kind of beyond that, though, what I see in my practice working with high-tech companies is that their investments in SMAC platforms, social mobile analytics or big data and cloud, is that next wave of revenue for them. And that's where, the products, it's really not the product so much, but it's the services and the platform around that product that is really driving the monetization for them. Okay. And when I really think about what Adobe is we are a SMAC platform. And so I think by virtue of that, we're in a lot of discussions about, what is going to be really cross-channel marketing is really the monetization using a SMAC platform.
I was thinking about SMAC Stack, a couple of years ago, and it's one of those things where if you're deep into this industry and this business, you become familiar with these terms. And then a few years later, once they really gain currency, you have a tendency to forget, we get a little bit ahead of ourselves sometimes, or at least I do. So if you could talk just a little bit more about SMAC and social mobile analytics and cloud, because to me, we were talking about that 2 years ago, way before it was being adopted. But now you're saying you're starting to see it mature, I think.
Absolutely. I think the work that I do with Adobe is working with a lot of technology companies and telco companies to help them really figure out, in some sense, how to use their marketing platform better, but their marketing platform is now become a digital platform. Okay. And they understand that a lot of what they're offering is going to be inherently a service or something that's an extension of that platform. And I think it's a different mindset around what is value and what is considered to be value, okay, and how do they look at their value chain in light of this platform so that they don't get disturbed and their businesses could get completely upended. Okay. So I think I see companies, and not just tech companies, right? We have financial services companies. We have all these companies that are watching tech companies invade their space, and they're all like, what are they doing? How is it that they are able to move with such agility into another industry? And it comes back to their investments in a SMAC stack. And so I see a lot of other companies trying to emulate that. Okay.
Chad is sometimes known as Cloud Jones. He could also be known as IoT Jones. I remember a year or so ago, or a year and a half ago, you had a list of IoT sensors. You had like the definitive page of every possible sensor that was on the market. So you knew all about that stuff at that point. Maybe could you talk a little bit about that, why there's so many types of sensors, but then we'll finish and then start again, going back the other way, how that integrates with what you're doing now, because now you're into the deep information that the sensors are producing. Right. So it's sort of a two-part question, but I'd like to know more about the sensors again. I was amazed at all the different ones that Sure. You knew about.
Sure. Well, first of all, back to your story with you coming out of the bar and emergency medical help being there. I would think about it a little bit differently. And there's, you turn around and there's a bar or a drink handed to you at the 80% mark of your cocktail. So it's like automatic. That'd be a better scenario in my world.
Okay, I like that. We'll roll with that.
And then an Uber on demand when I'm at at the limit. But
yeah.
That word on demand. Is really where everything is going. We're seeing an on-demand economy form, and it's completely altering how markets are handled It's reshaping industries. We look at Uber. The taxi industry is just getting crushed because Uber has an on-demand environment that not only gives you the instant gratification of getting a car service, but it allows a bidirectional rating system. The power of that data is important because not only do I rate the actual driver and say, hey, were they 5 stars? Were they good? Did they take me where I needed to go? Did they take a circuitous route? All those sorts of things. But the driver gets to turn around and say, was this guy coming out of the bar out of control? Did he abuse me? All of those things. So now that puts the consumer as well as the driver actually on their best behavior. So cooperatively, the service itself takes a step up. We see that in hotels. I checked in here completely electronically today. It just printed out a key for me. Awesome. I think that really the key with sensors is, yes, we're going to sensor up everything. And I think that one sensor that was not on that actual page that I had was what I like to call a carbon-based subjective sensor. And that's us. That's us. We're carbon-based subjective sensors, right? Yeah. If I decided to build an entire system to say, what's the ambient light, or if the lights are on and off in this room, I could try to build that and take weeks and all that sort of stuff. Or I could just say, hey, tweet me if the lights are on or off, and somebody will sit there and go, they're on, sort of, So I think that sensors are important, keeping track of that, certainly you look at Waze. Humans are the sensors in Waze, right? We report into Waze where cops are, thank God, help with my speeding tickets, and all of those things, right?
Well, I mean, way back in the old days of early artificial intelligence, that was the whole thing. The computers had no sensors. They were dumb. And it's one of those things, people who are engineering the processing power and the memory and the storage thinking that was the brain. And it's like one day we woke up and went, they can't feel anything. So now you got the sensors that are doing that, and that's exactly what we are, and now we're kind of trying to recreate that experience and all that sort of thing.
Well, I think data to me is the most important outcome of this, not just because I'm in deep information sciences, but that's the whole point. How do you actually take the information and make it do something predictively, looking at something historically, or doing it in a contextual stream?
And how do you do that?
Right. Well, I think part of that is, as carbon-based subjective sensors, we can only pull in so much information and find correlations between things at a certain rate. But the just deluge of data that's occurring, especially with all of the sensors that are coming online, we're not going to be able to find that and gain those insights like we could. We need to be able to leverage things like machine learning to go in and find these patterns for us based upon things we've taught it, but then it can go off model and in an unsupervised fashion tell me this is something that you need to pay attention to, either from a reporting type of standpoint or to actually turn around and do some sort of action, whether that's alert somebody, set off to another system and open service tickets, or to tell the physical environment to react in a specific way. Right? Those are the things that will start to really change how we look at everything around us.
Well, and it comes with grappling with the information. I'm imagining a nightmare scenario where we unwittingly create systems that are smarter than us, and they're snickering to each other, going, "This is teaching physics to goldfish," and we're the goldfish suddenly. It might be a while in the future, but how do we get a grip on all the information that we're generating now, Jill?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to realize is that not all data is equal, and our forefathers might object to that, but we see that.
Does data have human rights now?
Absolutely. And we see that, just today, in terms of behavioral data, and our customers want to, gather all this behavioral data, but in fact, not all of it is useful. I think that the Internet of Things is going to push us to be more discriminating. There are things that, we can have decisions made in the sensor itself at the gateway level. You don't have to pull it all back in and try to manage and massage out some sort of, massive intelligence or do, correlations or whatever. I think we'll get much, much better at dealing with, something's wet, turn off the system, something's hot, shut down the oil drill or whatever it is, versus, I need to go to a gateway versus I need to collect it and analyze it.
Okay.
So I think I agree with what you said, which is the magic happens when we get to predictive predictive action. And we're
Predictive
still,
analytics and-
right, and we're still today really in just not being able to take advantage of all the data that is available from, the myriad of sensors out there. If you look at from an intelligence perspective, a car has anywhere from 50 to 100 computers that is more powerful than the computer system that NASA used to send the first astronaut to the moon. So that, when you look at it in that context, it's actually staggering. But if you look at the amount of data that's actually coming out of a piece of heavy machinery, it's 150,000 data points per minute on average, right? That's a ton of data. And I think the analytics and being able to translate that into something meaningful, and then who actually is using the data? Is it a human, or is it the the machine that's able to make some of those decisions on behalf of the human?
So Chad talks, we're carbon-based subjective sensors, and then you talk about cognitive computing and predictive analytics. Are we trying to make those systems equal human intelligence? Certainly they have a larger capacity to gather data, but as far as the power to analyze it and predict it, are we trying to equal our own limited intelligence, improve upon it, remove the subjectivity, or sometime account for the subjectivity in a way?
I think it's going to get really interesting very quickly, because if you think about a marketplace where you have interconnected systems, there's a human can't possibly gather all of that data, analyze that data, because you have different systems all interconnected, and it's the collective gathering and analysis that allows you to do something really meaningful. I think we're getting to the point where we can start to see some of the potential already when you have an ecosystem for a vertical, where really interesting things start to happen that impact an entire industry, and people are actually able to focus on the secondary tasks are handled by the machinery or the sensors, and the humans focus on where they can add the most value.
Okay. Chris, how do you get a grip on everything that you're...
Yeah, I think that machines and robots do a lot of tasks better than humans, right? I also love the idea of autonomics. The difference between a 3-star restaurant and a 4-star restaurant is that the 4-star restaurant anticipates what you want before you know you want it. So think about that for a minute. In this life scenario that we're painting here, I like the idea of enchantment. If you walk in your home and it starts learning your patterns, I mean, the Nest is doing machine learning, but what if everything in your home or your car, or even the job site for safety reasons? I mean, the cranes are knowing that they're going off tilt. There's a safety concern. I think that that these things can be automated through either machine learning and/or artificial intelligence to make our lives better, make the world a better place.
Okay. And Armando, you do analytics, so how do you get a grip on all this information?
Well, first of all, I'm a little bit scared. Meaning, if you think, I was the first one talking about digital life, but, I want to get a little bit more control on our life, because it seems from what we're saying, exactly, what we're saying. Well, no, I appreciate absolutely the value of the, of the concept of analytics, analyzing data, but I also really believe this may become a threat in the future. It's not just, so it's something so powerful that can become in some way also, something that we have to watch, and we have to understand exactly how those data will be used. The concept of the privacy and the sensor will be able in some way to make our life better, but also to be a little bit more, too much intrusive also in our life. So I think that's an interesting topic. So the data clearly will use us to understand how digital is affecting our life. But again, I'm going back to my first point. I think that we should see also the fact that we're able to connect data to sensor in a way that we could also envision a different way of thinking how we interact with things, not just collecting information. Just saying, I mean, if you remember last year we were discussing about the consumption on the cloud. So talking about that the model is coming. So if you look outside what is happening right now, I mean, companies like Amazon or Microsoft with Azure, they're really selling consumption. So I think that these things of the data should not just be collecting data because we want to know everything about the consumer, but it's also, okay, we need to find a way to provide data to the consumer so that we use this data for changing the way that we are providing them digital product. That is not that we provide them a digital product for capturing information on him, but we provide digital product for changing the way that we sell the product today. So all the capability that we have in, metering and all these things, for me, should bring also the IoT to a next level. That is not just that we collect the data, but we use the data. That's my opinion.
I'm going to come reverse things a little bit, and we'll start here with Chad because I have, I think something that's important. We'll try to be a 4-star panel or 5-star panel and anticipate. So we're talking to people who buy things. They have budgets for technology. Some of them may in fact develop it since we're in Silicon Valley. But the people here are, now they have to go back to work and this IoT stuff and this cloud stuff, and they have to figure out where to get started. And how do you get started? You have these capabilities that you think you can pull off, but how do you recommend as purveyors of technology, as sellers of technology, for people who are buying it, how do they get started? And, do you start from the top level on down? Do you, how do you just get a grip on this and figure out what your path is going to be for your own personal or own company IoT?
Sure. So I think the first thing that you have to do is don't think about technology. So most people say, okay, well, wait a minute. The whole Internet of Things is about connecting things to the Internet. It's not. It really isn't. What it is about is looking at your business. What is the case that you have that you can think through and say, if I had this piece of data, I could actually inform a process and a workflow that would streamline my business and lead to greater market capture, greater customer delight, better experiences, on and on and on. And then when you think of those cases and you have them aligned, then you think of the systems that you already have in place and do gap analysis on what is missing from that overall business set of systems. Is it ERP? Is it CRM? You can go down the list of those things that support your business. And then when you understand those things, then you begin to form the actual use cases that technology can backfill what you're trying to do with sensors and with platforms and with connectivity and those types of things to get you that data that supports that first order use case. Okay. Because when you build technology for technology's sake and you don't use serving a first order principle of business or a higher use case, then you're doomed to mediocrity or failure. You have to start with why.
Great. Jill?
So probably a similar theme, starting with the value chain, or marketers use customer journeys. I mean, that's a pretty standard way to think about what is your audience trying to achieve, right? And then maybe how you could make that easier or remove complexity. And the type of value that then would achieve for the audience itself, or another business if you're working with businesses. So I think, again, it's coming back to the value chain or customer journey.
So I think that IoT, it doesn't matter which industry you're talking about, it's still nascent. And that basically means that most companies do not know what their business will be next month, next year, the next 5 years. So the technology is often an inhibitor for the business from the standpoint that what is true across anything that's IoT related today is that you need to be able to do fast fail business models. And so that means that you need to be able to experiment in the market. You're developing in many cases, the ecosystem of partners that allow you to derive additional value for your end customers. And so there's a lot of experimentation that's involved, and you need the ability of your software solutions, whether that's the CRM, ERP systems, monetization, Anything that gets in the way of you being able to transform and be agile, depending on what's happening, is probably going to get problematic in your ability to compete in the future.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I think starting simple and not focusing on technology is key. I think a lot of companies get lost in research and trying to figure out how do you solve this grand vision of IoT, or what does IoT mean to a company. And as we see, there's so many definitions of IoT just in this room or on this panel, that I think if you can start small within a scope that you can control and say, if I do this, I can save a life, or I can drive costs down over my business unit, or maybe I can delight or enchant a customer even better if this was more automated. But start small, and then I think a company, it catches fire. There's something to that with the little successes, little wins, they catch fire in companies, and then it gets other people thinking. And then imagine that. If you had every knowledge worker in a company thinking about how can I either automate my job or make my customers happier or save money for the company, it almost creates this fire or competition in a company to keep expanding on those ideas to actually evolve, I think, into an IoT strategy.
Well, one thing I've seen is I do a lot of looking into smart cities. And there's a place where you could absolutely fail with grand visions. Yeah. And there's something called the Smart Cities Council, based in Seattle and Washington, D.C., and they have endless use cases. And what I was struck by is most of those ideas are small. And even the smartest cities, such as Boston and Singapore and others that you can name, it's a series of little stuff, rather than some great big grand vision that's probably doomed to fail. So it seems like everyone would agree with that. Parking. Or just kiosk or a smart bench.
Smart waste management.
Smart waste management.
Smart waste management. And but rather than these big colossal visions, even in a smart city scale, they're doing it one thing at a time. There's enough diversity in technologies. There's enough stuff out there to get your hands on, right?
Well, I was going to say, it's easier to ask for $10,000 for a very small proof of concept than to ask for $10 million on the grand vision, right?
Yeah.
And little successes, I think, create
How do
big wins.
people get started? What should they do?
Well, I agree with all of you, and I agree with the last sentence. I think we should start, forgetting technology, 100%, completely forget the technology and look at the big picture. That for me means put your customer at the center. Try to, envision new way that your customer want for your products. Try to think completely in a different way, how you can let them experience your product. Sorry. So that's the key point. Try to disrupt your industry. I know that sounds, crazy, but you should start thinking how I can be the next Uber of my industry, how I can be the Airbnb of my industry. So where the technology becomes a key differentiator value for my product, for my company, this will also make available the budget, because you will have a bigger picture than just being, someone in IT that try to do complex things with technology. Your line of business managers should see the value that you can bring to the business, not to the technology.
We have a little timer here that says we have time left, but actually we don't. It's a little off. I smell garlic fries. Are we out at the ballpark or something? I think there's food being served. So we have 5 technology purveyors who are saying, don't think about the technology. So that's beautiful. And you're saying, think about what you want to do first. Think about what you want to achieve. Don't overthink it, and don't think too grandly at first, because we have enough technology. 5 great people, 5 great companies. They're all purveying a lot of great stuff. Please feel free to come and talk to them about anything that you're doing. Thanks again for coming here, and I believe the exhibit floor is going to open in about 1 minute. Thank you very much.